Hello viewer, this is Agriculture Research Council of Nigerian Television. My name remains Joshua Ishaya, your Aquaman. When I mean the Aquaman, I mean I am the one who brings to you all you need to know that is in the water, and bring to you how they are farmed, cultivated, or better still, how they are being marketed. So it could be snails, shrimps, fish, or whatsoever it is that is in the water. We'll make sure we bring it to you only on Aqua Farming, on your first ever Agricultural Research Council of Nigerian Television. And today on the program, we'll be looking at the section of snail farming. Snail meat has been consumed by humans worldwide since prehistoric times. It is high in protein and iron, low in fat, and contains almost all the amino acid needed by humans. A recent study has also shown that glandular substances in edible snail meat cause agglutination of certain bacteria, which could be of value in fighting ailments including whooping cough. Edible snails also play an important role in folk medicine in the world. The bluish liquid obtained from the shell when the meat has been removed is believed to be good for infant development. The high iron content of the meat is considered important in treating anemia. In the past, it was recommended for combating ulcers and asthma. At the imperial court in Rome, snail meat was thought to contain aphrodisiac properties and was often served to visiting dignitaries in the late evening. There's more reason here on the first Agricultural Research Council of Nigerian Television. We'll be giving you how farm is being cultivated and all the processes you need to know. Eventually, you want to go into snail farming because at the end, it's one of the major commodities that's been exported in Nigeria.
In West Africa, snail meat has traditionally been a major ingredient in the diets of people living in the high forest belt. In Cote d'Ivoire and Nigeria, for an example, an estimated 7.9 million kg are eaten annually. In Ghana, it is clear that demand occurred recently outstrips supply. International trade in snail is flourishing in Europe and North America. However, in spite of the considerable foreign and local demand, commercial snail farms such as those in Europe, Southeast Asia, and the Americas hardly exist in Africa. In Ghana, Nigeria, and Cote d'Ivoire, where snail meat is particularly popular, snails are gathered from the forest during the wet season in recent years. However, wild snail populations have declined considerably, primarily because of the impact of such human activities as deforestation, pesticide use, slash and burn agriculture, spontaneous bushfires, and the collection of immature snails. It is therefore important to encourage snail farming in order to conserve these important resources. Now, let's look at some of the advantages of snail farming. The environment. Snails are environment friendly because unlike poultry or pigs, neither the snails nor its droppings smell offensively. Snail can also be reared in the backyard. Capital, technical labor, and financial input in simple snail farming are relatively low compared to those other types of livestock farming. Poultry, pigs, goats, sheep, cattle. Snail meat is a good source of protein. It is rich in iron and calcium but low in fat and cholesterol compared to the other protein sources like poultry and pigs. Some of the disadvantages of snail farming includes climate. Without expensive artificial means of climate control, snail farming is restricted to the humid tropical forest zone, which offers a constant temperature, high relative humidity, preferably no dry season, and a fairly constant day-night rhythm throughout the year. Snail meat is considered a delicacy by some, whereas others will not even touch it for religious or cultural reasons. Snails are relatively slow-growing animals. Furthermore, the consumable meat makes up only 40% of the snail total live weight. Consequently, snail farming is not a way to make money quickly. Snails that have escaped from a farm or been dumped by a farmer may quickly develop into a serious pet in agriculture and horticulture. For this reason, it must be emphasized that snails farming should be seen as only component in a diversified farming venture. However, with patience, good management, and careful integration into existing farming activities, snail farming can provide substantial longer-term rewards. Agromasa agrobirth snail farming. Snails belong to a group of invertebrate animals known as mollusks. Most mollusks carry a shell. Other members of this group include slugs, mussels, squids, and cuttlefish. This agroduct concentrates on the farming potential of giant African land snail, more specifically the species Achatina folica and Achatina marginata. These belong to the family Achatinidae, a diverse group of large pulmonate land snails originally from western, eastern, and southern Africa, with long, slender shells. Their size ranges from 3 cm to 25 cm. The 14 general are Achatina, Atopocolis, Baquetina, Botua coluna, Calispepila lengos. They mostly live in jungles in tropical countries, but some may live in grassland. They primarily feed on fruits and leaves. They are easy to find and not difficult to rear. They lay several batches of eggs each year. Generally, they are quite easy to care for, being able to put up with a range of conditions. Essentially, a snail consists of 2 parts, the body and the shell. The body is divided into 3 parts, the head, the foot, and the visceral mass. The head is not well demarcated and carries 2 pairs of retractable tentacles. One pair of tentacles is far longer than the other and contains the eyes and the knobbed end. The long muscular foot occupies almost the entire ventral surface. Unlike the head, it's not clearly demarcated from the rest of the body. A shallow longitudinal groove runs along the center of the foot. The hump-shaped visceral mass is housed in the shell above the foot. It contains the digestive, reproductive, and respiratory organs. The skin over the visceral humps secretes a large calcareous shell. The shell is made up of calcium carbonate. In most species, the shell accounts for about a third of the body weight. It is the snail's protective casing whenever danger threatens. The snail withdraws its body into the shell. A list of edible snail species of African origin is provided, and North America have over 20 edible species, of which the most popular are petit gris, or the small gray snail, Helix aspersa, the Burgundy snail, Partia, and escargot toque, on the snail of Turkey. Snail meat of this species is known as escargot. In France, snail meat is sometimes exported from Africa and sold as escargot achatine. The most popular edible snail in West Africa, especially Nigeria, are the giant snail achatina, and the beef bland Achatatina marginita. Local names are given in the list below. Most studies on snails in West Africa have concentrated on these two species and on the garden snails. Achatina folica in Ghana, Achatina achatina is considered the most prized species for eating, followed by Achatina marganita and the Achatina folica. Now, edible species of African origin: Achatina achatina, common name giant snail, tiger snail, Ghana, local name corresponding language within the pathogens. Gambia is called Onuldu, Sierra Leone is called Conch, Liberia is called Den, in Ghana is called Obobo, in Power is called Akan, in Nigeria is called Katakanwa, in East Africa is called Konokono. Achatina folicia, common name garden snail, foolish snail, sometimes also called the giant African snail. In Ghana is called Akan. Northern tribe of Ghana, Burkina Faso, Togo, Nigeria call it Kreteke. Nigeria is Opera Yoruba, Kenya call it a communion, and East Africa konokono. Other edible species exist, but they are of minor local importance. The local name usually refers to all edible snail species in the country. The distribution in Africa of these three species on which this documentary concentrates: Achatina achatina, Achatina margarita, as well as the original source area of Achatina folica in East Africa. Achatina achatina giant snail, tiger snail. A widely distributed species is West Africa, popularly Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Liberia, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and Togo. Can be considered a good candidate for snail farming in most areas of West Africa, and although it requires high humidity than the other two species and need a longer growing time to reach sexual maturity. Achatina snails are reputedly the largest land snails in the world. Although usually much smaller, they can grow up to 30 cm in body length and 25 cm in shell height. Average adult shell length is 18 cm, with an average diameter of 9 cm. This conically shaped, fairly pointed shell is brownish, with a characteristic stripe pattern. Hence, the tiger snails. Achatina originates from the West African rainforest belt from Guinea through Nigeria. Because Achatina is the most prized species for consumption in Ghana, it's becoming increasingly rare in the wild. A study of this documentary ecotypes in Ghana, known as Tomina, Epedua, or Gosso, showed significant differences between them. The Epedua snail had the shortest estivation periods, the Doyina snail the long. Now let's look at the life history of its reproduction system. Reproduction without delay. Because of estivation of hibernation, snails will reach sexual maturity in less than a year, even as early as 5 months under laboratory conditions. Reciprocal copulation 6 to 8 hours must occur to produce viable eggs. Laying. The small 4 mm diameter yellowish white eggs are laid in clutches of 10 to 400 eggs within 8 to 20 days of copulation. Usually, the nest excavated in the soil repeated laying may result from the compulsion as sperm is stored in each snail. Egg-laying frequency depends on climate, particularly in frequency and duration of the rainy season. Up to 500 eggs per year in Sri Lanka, 300 per year in Hong Kong, and 1,000 per year in Calcutta. Upon hatching, the hatching consume their eggshells and unhatched siblings, remaining on the ground for 5 to 15 days and feeding on organic detritus. Eventually, they feed primarily on plants at night, returning to roots before dawn. Juveniles, animals with shells length of 5 to 30 mm, apparently cause the most damage to plant. The snails may reach sexual maturity in less than a year. Larger snails continue to feed on plant materials but feed increasingly on detritus as they age. Normally, they live for 3 to 5 years. The species cause considerable economic damage to a wide variety of commercial crops in most parts of the world. The amount of damage is greatest when the species is first established. During this period, snails are usually very large and their composition can become immense. These followed by a stable population phase and the final period of decline. In Nigeria, experiments juvenile growth was found to be inversely proportional to temperature, falling sharply at temperatures 30 degrees centigrade and directly proportional to rainfall and humidity. Body weight gain slowed down significantly during the dry season, December to March in South Nigeria, where the breeding trials took place. The species reaches sexual maturity at an age of around 1 year. When the individual reach a live weight of 100 to 125 gram, reciprocal copulation must occur to produce viable eggs. In starting a snail farming, you need to consider choosing a site. Snails are adept at escaping from enclosures. A priority in setting up a productive snail farming venture, therefore, is to construct escape-proof housing. There are several types of snail housing to choose from depending on the size of the venture. The first step, however, is to select an appropriate site. The main factor is to consider in selecting the following: microclimates, wind speed and direction, soil characteristics, safety protecting the snails from disease and predators and poachers. Optimal site selection help to prevent or at least reduce dormancy. Factors such as temperature and humidity and soil characteristics that influence snail survival and growth. Temperature and humidity. Snails are cold-blooded. They thrive best in areas with moderate temperature and high humidity. In West Africa, temperatures in the areas where most edible species are found do not fluctuate greatly. However, there are significant fluctuations in air humidity which have a pronounced effect on species dealt with these publication in their natural surroundings. Snails go into dormancy during the dry season. Relative air humidity should not be near saturation because it will encourage the development of harmful bacteria and fungi. In outdoor situation, it is clearly impossible to control climate factors. However, the magnitude of temperature and humidity fluctuations is reduced in areas of relatively undisturbed forest or fairly dense vegetation cover. Such sites should be preferred to open grassland to farmland areas. Obviously, snails can be reared in a completely controlled indoor environment. But the price, whether the investment will be profitable, depends on one's financial resources, local production cost per kg, snail meat and marketing options. Wind speed and direction. Wind accelerates moisture loss in snails. To prevent snails from drying out, snails should be situated in sites that are protected from the wind. Downhill sites are usually the most suitable, preferably those with good trees cover to reduce wind impact. Planting. Trees around snails' pens will help to reduce wind speeds and improve the microclimate. It will also protect the snails from scorching sun or torrential rain. Soil characteristics. Soil is a major part of snail habitat. Soil composition, water content, and texture are important factors to consider in site selection. The snail shell is made up of mainly of calcium derived from the soil and from feed. Snails derive most of their water requirements from the soil. Snails dig in soil to lay their eggs and to rest during the dry season. For all this reason, it is essential that the soil is loose and that its calcium and water content is high. Heavy, clear soil that becomes waterlogged in the rainy season and compact during the dry season is undesirable. The sandy soil is undesirable as well because of its low water holding capacity. Acidic soil should be avoided because acidity will interfere with the development of the snail shell. Soils that are too acidic might be neutralized with the lime to about pH 7. Soils with high organic matter support the growth and development of snails. In general, if a soil supports and good growth of cocoyam to tomatoes, and leafy vegetable. It is suitable for snail farming. Before introducing snail to the site, the soil should be loosened by tilling. Snails need damp, not wet environment. Although snail need moisture, you must drain well to waterlogged soil. Similarly, rainwater must run up promptly. Snails breathe air and may drown in other wet surroundings. A soil moisture containing 80% of field capacity is favorable. In the hours of darkness or humidity, over 80% will promote good snails activity and growth. Most snail activity, including feeding, occurs at night, with peak activity taking place 2 to 3 hours after the offset of darkness. The cooler temperatures stimulate activity, and the nighttime dew helps the snail move easily. Snails like to hide in skeletal places during most of the day. In Nigeria, shredded semi-dry banana leaves are put in the snail's pens for the snails to hide under during the day. To maintain adequate humidity and moisture levels in the dry locations, misting sprayer can be used, like those for the plant propagation, if technically and economically feasible. Snail shells are 97 to 98% calcium carbonate, therefore calcium must be available to them, either from the soil or from the external source. Organic matters in the soil is important as carbonate soils that are rich in exchangeable calcium and magnesium stimulate growth best. Calcium may also be set out in the feeding dish so the snails can eat at will. Snail dig in soil and ingest it. Good soil favors snails' growth and provides some of their nutrition. Lack of access to good soil may result in the fragile shell even if the snail have well-balanced feed. The snail growth may large back behind the low of the other snails and good soils. The snail often eats feed, then eats that. Sometimes they eat only one or the other. Snails dig in soil and ingest. A good soil favors snails' growth and provides some of their nutrition. Lack of access to good soil may result in fragile shells, even if the snails have well-balanced feeds. The snail's growth may lag far behind the growth and of the good snails on the good soils. Snails often eat feed, then eat that. Sometimes they eat one another. Eventually, the soil in the snail's pens will become fouled with mucus and droppings. Chemical changes may also occur. The soil must therefore be changed once every 3 months. Constructing the snary. The type of dimension of your snary or snaries depend obviously on the snail growing system you choose and on the quantity of snails you intend to produce. As far as housing is concerned, your snail farm could be extensive, semi-extensive, or intensive in increasing order of complexity, management, and financial input. 3 options might be considered: extensive system, outdoor free-range snail pens; mixed or semi-intensive system, egg laying and hatching occur in a controlled environment. The young snails are removed after 6 to 8 weeks to outside pens for growing or fattening, or both. Intensive closed systems are example plastic tunnels, houses, greenhouses, and buildings with controlled climate, regardless of the size and types of snails.
Many thanks for staying with us here on your first Agricultural Research Council of Nigeria. I'm sure you've learned one or two all about snail farming. In the high altitude forest areas of West Africa, particularly in Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, snail meat forms a substantial part of the meat in the diet of the local people. Snails are gathered in wild, packed into bags, wooden crates or baskets and transported to selling points along main roads or to urban centers. The most common species sold at the roadside in West Africa, especially Nigeria, are snails, duckers, brush-tails, porcupines, hares, and grasscutters. Snails and grasscutters fetch the highest market price per kilogram. In urban areas, the gatherers may sell the snails directly to the consumers, or to wholesalers, traders, or to retailers. Snail can be smoked and stored for sale during the off-season when prices are high. Many thanks for staying through here on your first Agricultural Research Council Nigeria. My name remains Joshua Ishaya, and stay tuned for more of our programs on your first Agricultural Research Council on Nigerian television. Bye for now.